Hey everyone, how's everyone doing out there in Final Cut Pro TV, Final Cut TV Radio Land? I'm doing fine here on the East Coast of the good old USA. My name's Richard Taylor. Look what I have back there. I got a brand new amplifier, a little battery powered practice amplifier by Positive Grid, I think it is. It's really cool. It's called the Mini. I've been using it quite a bit, practicing, keeping up on practice. So, what do we have here? Here we go. Good morning. Good morning, everyone. I have my coffee. We're going to be talking about Final Cut Pro and anything else related. We've got some talk this week again of, I see it on Twitter over and over and over and over. Every year I hear Final Cut Pro 10 on the iPad, Final Cut Pro 10 on the iPad, Final Cut Pro 10 on the iPad. Well, we will be talking about that. Let's just get a few comments out of the way first. Hello from Peoria, Illinois. How you doing, Michael? Glad you could make it. Good morning, Richard. How you doing? Good morning from Philadelphia. Good morning from North Carolina. All over the place again today. I'm glad everybody could make it. This seems to be a very popular time slot, so I'm going to continue doing these every week. I already did 2 live streams this morning. There's animal rescue, 2 animal rescues, local animal rescues. One I did at around 7:30 for Finally Home Animal Rescue. They're having their annual flower sale to raise money for it. And then I did one for the Humane Society of Carroll County in Westminster, which has their yard sale today to make money. We have a very strange situation in Carroll County where the Humane Society is both a nonprofit animal rescue and they're the county animal control. So they get some funding from the county and some funding they raise on their own. Well, today's one of those times when they're raising on their own. So there's been a lot of, comments and things this week. We're getting closer and closer to WWDC. Now, WWDC is a month away. I know some things that are happening at WWDC that I can't talk about because it's not for public consumption, but I know some generic things. I don't know any big secrets or anything. But one of the things that I want to specify is that there's never in the history of Final Cut Pro been a major Final Cut Pro release at WWDC. Never. Never been a Final Cut Pro release at WWDC. Now, there's a couple things about that. Yes, they previewed a future version of Final Cut Pro that came out in December of the year, but nothing at WWDC. Nothing is released at WWDC. Now, that doesn't mean they won't do it this year. I guess that's my point. They've never done it in the past. It does not mean they won't release a new version of Final Cut Pro around WWDC. Apple's unpredictable. That's one thing we learned about them. So, could we see a release of Final Cut Pro around WWDC? Never been done before. Could be 2023 is the first year it happens. Here's something else. Mac Pros have always been shown at WWDC. When there's a new Mac Pro coming out, they have always been shown all the way back to the cheese grater, all the way back to the G5, G3, whatever the heck it was. They've always been shown at WWDC. So last year they didn't show the Mac Pro. We didn't get a Mac Pro last year. We didn't get a Mac Pro this year. So if they show the Mac Pro this year, obviously, it could come out. This is the Mac Silicon version of the Apple Silicon version of the Mac Pro. Not not perhaps, they could show it. They could say it's coming out later this year. We're sorry that we didn't make the deadline that we arbitrarily set for ourselves. It's so weird that a company as big as Apple doesn't know what their schedule is going to be like. Wait a minute, yeah, I got it. Just wanted to check something. It's really weird that somebody as big as Apple doesn't know that they're not going to be able to put a Apple Silicon Mac Pro out in time for the rest of the Macs. So we have a couple of comments here. Any audio unit scanning problem updates? You know, Michael, they've had that issue in the past and they fixed it. Now, apparently it's happening again to some people. Listen, I will reach out to somebody that I know on the team and say, hey, look, people are still reporting this audio units issue. Do you think, is there a fix in the work? Are you guys aware of it? Guys and gals aware of it? And now Eric says, gee, Richard, sounds to me like you will be announced at WWDC. It's never been done before. There's never been an update to Final Cut Pro around WWDC. Once again, they've shown us a beta version that's not being released. I'm talking about actually being released. If you look at all the dates when Final Cut Pro updates came out, none of them happened at WWDC. They certainly can preview a new version of Final Cut without even announcing what it is and saying later this year there's going to be a new version of Final Cut, pre-release version. That could happen again, or they could release a new version of Final Cut Pro at WWDC. That would be the first time. They've never done it before, but they certainly can do it in 2023. I'm not saying, it's an exciting time typically. I'm not excited about the M2 Mac Pro simply because I'm not getting one. I got the 2019 Mac Pro and I used it for 2 years and it was a fantastic, fantastic machine. It really was. I had Thunderbolt ports all over the place. I had USB 3 ports because I put a couple of PCIe cards in it. So I have no idea what the new Mac Pro is going to be. I've heard rumors it's going to be in the same form factor. That seems weird to me because the Apple Silicon Mac Pros they use onboard memory, onboard the SoC, right? They don't have external memory like the Intel version did. So I had 8 memory slots, or maybe more than that. I think it was 8 memory slots in my 2019. As you know, let me pull that up. Let me just see let's see what's going on in the cat room. Nothing. Everybody's sleeping. I think I see an orange cat. There's a cat over there. Looks like Amanda Jones. And you can see outside it's springtime there. Good old springtime. Let's pull up the, let me see what's going on here. Let me pull up this real quick. Not that. Let me see. Hold on one second. Road mic. Copy. Do I have that? Background, FCPX. No, I don't see. Well, we might pull this up later just for a joke. I don't see what I'm looking for. Huh. That's odd. Oh, there it is. Yeah, there it is. Well, we will do this. So speaking of my Mac Pro, I sold my Mac Pro. I sold my Mac Pro in a couple of weeks ago. I got almost half price for it, which was a really, really good deal. Is the price listed there? Yeah, $39.95. So I paid something little under $9,000 for mine when I got it. It's not the top of the line. It's just a bump up from the typical. And I ended up selling it for just under half price. Now, I'm really glad I got a chance to do that, because when I put this up for list, a lot of people were saying, "Oh, we'll give you $800 or give you $1,000 or $1,200," and I just dismissed those people. But I said, "I'm not interested in that." But I did get a lot of bids, six bids at $3,500. And I said, well, I'll probably take one of those if nobody else comes in higher. Well, I got somebody that come in higher, to my bid price, just under $4,000, and that's the one that I took. So I sold it for just under half price, and I'm really glad I had that money set aside in an envelope. It's not going to be touched, because that's going to buy my next MacBook Pro. That is going to buy my next MacBook Pro. I'm going to wait for the M3 version, or, maybe I'll get an M2 version if I see a really good deal on one. But anyway, let's get back to WWDC. So the things that I see are, of course, probably some AI stuff. Maybe the virtual glasses, maybe they'll be coming out. Maybe the Apple Silicon Mac Pro. If they introduce the Apple Silicon Mac Pro, the odds of an update to Final Cut Pro at least being previewed go up. At least being previewed. They've many times have shown a pre-release version of Final Cut Pro without releasing it, without even naming it. They just said, this is a pre-release version of Final Cut Pro we're demoing on this Mac Pro. So that could be what happens. They've given us 2 updates in 16 months, 17 months, something like that. It's a ridiculous pace that they've been updating. We went to NAB. There was no Final Cut Pro presence anywhere, no Apple presence anywhere. Zero Apple presence, Final Cut Pro presence at NAB. Avid was there. Premiere was there. Resolve 18.5 was there. Resolve had a gigantic place, as they normally do Blackmagic, because they have hardware and they have software. Now, I've been messing around with Resolve 18.5. I've been doing some basic edits in it, because I'm still using Final Cut Pro as primary because I have so much time in it, and I'm not going anywhere. I'm sticking with Final Cut Pro. Don't worry about that. That's not happening at this point. I'm not going to be jumping ship and only using Resolve. But the less that Final Cut Pro, if they don't have updates for Final Cut Pro, the less feature updates they have, I'm going to spend more time with Resolve, because Final Cut Pro at this point is boring. It's very, very boring NLE. There's no innovation happening. There's no new features happening, so it's very, very boring. Resolve, on the other hand, 18.5 is very exciting. They have the new text-based editing in 2 places. So you can go to the browser, the bin media browser. You can select a clip and choose to transcribe just that clip. When it's done transcribing, this is the studio version only. You have to have the studio license. When it's done transcribing, a text document will come up with the transcription. I think it has timestamps. It must have timestamps, because if you select a portion of the transcript, it sets an in and out point in the viewer. And then you can just you can select the text in the viewer, in the browser viewer, it selects that portion of the video, and you can just drop it in the timeline. Just press overwrite, press append, whatever you want to do. And you can do it again. You can select the portion of text, drop it in the timeline. Selects the portion of text, drop it in the timeline. Now, it doesn't work backwards. That's one thing it doesn't do. So you can't select the clips in the timeline and it'll highlight the text that, the text document. It doesn't work that way. So that's part 1. Now, listen, Final Cut Pro is absolutely going to have that. I guarantee you that Final Cut Pro, the next update to Final Cut Pro, the next feature update, is going to have text-based editing. The problem is now they're following behind Premiere and they're following behind Resolve. So they're not innovating. I guess that's my point. It's not original. It's not innovating. That's not what they're doing. But they certainly will have text-based editing. Absolutely. Whether we see it at WWDC, not ruling it out. I am not ruling it out, but it would be very highly unlikely, considering the fact they've never done that before. Let me check one thing real quick. Not ruling it out. Okay, just wanted to check the audio to make sure it sounds okay because I got a little bit of a complex audio setup. Hey, it's time for a coffee. Grab your favorite beverage, let's have a sip. I do like coffee. Next to water and air, coffee would be the third thing on my list continuing. If I had to choose. I don't have to choose, so I'm not worried about it. So what do you think about WWDC and a possible update to Final Cut Pro? There's a chance. Be highly unusual. Highly unusual. Eric says, innovation can come from unique implementation. But it's not. Yes, I understand if they did something completely innovative, that's fine, but they're already behind two other major NLEs. Now, they're working on text-based editing. They have to be. Now, if they come out with a brand new, if they come out with Final Cut Pro 11, that's going to be the ticket. That'll get my expectations Final Cut Pro and get it back up at least the mid-level, if not a little higher. Because right now it's down here, but my expectations for DaVinci Resolve are way up here. Final Cut Pro down here, DaVinci Resolve way up here. I don't want the Final Cut Pro team to meet my low expectations. I want them to raise my expectations. That's what I'm hoping for. So anyway, there's two things happening in June. WWDC, and I think it's the 12th birthday of Final Cut Pro on June the 21st. That's when it was released. It was not released at NAB around the Super Meet. That was just a preview. Actually was released on June 21st, 2011. So this will be this 12th birthday, I think. That'll be fine. So that's two things that are happening in June that could be Final Cut Pro related. Once again, we're going to be covering WWDC. We'll see what happens with WWDC for sure. But I wouldn't set my expectations that it's going to happen, but it wouldn't surprise me if it did that Apple surprises us, at least if they make the new Mac Pro come out and they say, here's an unreleased version of Final Cut Pro that's coming out later this year. Now, that could be it. Something. Who knows? What better software to run on a new Mac Pro than Final Cut Pro? None. None better. What else do we have? Let me see what else we have. I'll go through my list of things. There's a couple of other things. Oh, so every time WWDC comes around, especially WWDC, we got a comment here. Don says, I'll watch it, but no high hopes for anything Final Cut Pro related. That's what I think as well. But I don't mind being pleasantly surprised with the Final Cut Pro update. That would be fine. That would be completely fine. Of course, they'll show the new Mac OS and maybe the new iOS that's coming out in the fall. They'll show that. But this happens all the time. Let me just pull this up real quick. Oh, let me see. Where is my graphics? There's the graphics. And we'll take this off and we'll put this on and then I'll go live again. I got a preview monitor. I got a preview monitor. I'm doing something now. Okay. Here we go. So every year before WWDC, we get Final Cut Pro on the iPad. 2017, we got Final Cut Pro on the iPad. 2018, there's a rumor, Final Cut Pro on the iPad. 2019, Final Cut Pro on the iPad. 2020, 2021, 2022. It's again surfaced in 2023, and somebody's saying it's going to happen in 2024. So all these times I've been hearing, every time we get close to WWDC, Final Cut Pro on the iPad, Final Cut Pro on the iPad, Final Cut Pro on the iPad. Here's the deal with that. I'm sure they got a version of Final Cut Pro on the iPad over there in Cupertino, right? Well, it would make sense that they did, but it doesn't mean they're going to release it. Everything that happens in Cupertino is not necessarily released. So there's a couple of things. Number one, they also have a touchscreen MacBook Pro in Cupertino. I guarantee you they have one they've been working on. Doesn't mean it's going to be released. They also have the M2 Mac Pro over there in Cupertino. They have that as well. Doesn't mean it's going to be released at WWDC. Do they have Final Cut Pro on the iPad? Certainly. Certainly they have a version of Final Cut Pro on an iPad for testing or whatever. Doesn't mean it's coming out this year. Will it happen at some point? I would say probably. It's not going to affect me because I'm not going to be using Final Cut Pro on the iPad occasionally, but not as my main way of editing. I use Final Cut Pro on my MacBook Pro. I have used LumaFusion on the iPad and my iPhone, and I really like it. Really like it. So here we got a comment here. WWDC 23 will heavily feature VR and a glimpse of the new Mac Pro with a cameo of Final Cut Pro. That's his predictions. That's a very solid prediction. But I hope a cameo of Final Cut Pro means they're going to show us a couple of new features on the Mac Pro, not just the, They show, listen, here's one thing. They show Final Cut Pro all the time at WWDC. They almost always show Final Cut Pro on screen, but they don't release a new version at WWDC. They've never released a new feature update version of Final Cut Pro at WWDC. They've shown Final Cut Pro on screen on the video they have, and they've also said that was a pre-release version of Final Cut Pro that's coming out later in the year, but they don't release it at WWDC. I guess that's my point. So the odds of seeing Final Cut Pro are high, especially if they show the new Mac Pro. So that's coming up in 1 month. Today's the 6th, Saturday the 6th, so June, right around 1 month from now, they're going to be WWDC. So we'll see about a new version of Final Cut, or an updated version, or some new features. We'll see. If they do that at WWDC, it's the first time they've ever done that. But they're going to have to show the Mac Pro. Even if it's coming out later this year, they're going to have to show it because they always show the Mac Pro at WWDC. Everyone, back to the G3, the original tower, the 2019, they've always shown it at WWDC. So I don't think that's going to change. I think we will see the Mac Pro at WWDC. Could we see Final Cut Pro on the iPad? At some point, whenever that happens, if it happens in 2023 or 2024. But it's not going to be the full version of Final Cut. I've seen some reports says feature parity. It's not going to have feature parity because what am I going to do with my 1,500 Final Cut Pro plugins? They're not going to port over seamlessly to the iPad version of Final Cut. There's no way that's going to happen. It's a lot of work to do a plugin for an iPad versus Mac OS, iOS, iPad OS versus Mac OS. So it's not going to be feature parity, because if it's feature parity, all my plugins would work on the iPad. All my RAIDs would be able to connect to the iPad. Both of those things aren't going to happen on the iPad version, whatever they call it. Could they rename Final Cut Pro? Yes, they could. They absolutely could, to get rid of that launch problem that they had years ago, especially if they do a brand new version. Would they call it Final Cut Pro 11? Perhaps. Or they'll call it something else with a brand new name. That's the next evolution of Final Cut Pro. They will not make the mistake of not having Final Cut Pro projects open up in the new version of Final Cut Pro, though. That would be a huge repeat of the mistake they made in 2011. 2011. So that's not going to happen. The version that they come out with, the old version, the current version of Final Cut Pro, will be able to be opened in the new version of Final Cut Pro. That's the next evolution of Final Cut. That is so bizarre. This always happens. I'm going to just turn this down. I'm sitting there monitoring the YouTube channel, and it just decides it turns itself on. It does it all the time. Just turn the volume on. It's been X'd out. Now we're going to turn it on. Okay. A keynote by the Apple silicone nerd engineering will involve the M3 chip architecture. Apple silicone nerd engineering guy. Yeah, I know who you mean. Yeah. Probably, but we're not even done with the M2 yet, are we? But I'm thinking that the Mac Pro might be an M3. That's what I'm thinking. And maybe that's one of the reasons they wanted to skip the M2 and go right to the M3. That would be very cool. But I'm not going to get a Mac Pro. Don't need it. My MacBook Pro has been fantastic. It's been absolutely fantastic. I might have to keep this MacBook Pro if the new version of the OS or the new version of the hardware won't connect to my legacy RAIDs. I have a driver that lets me connect my MacBook Pro currently to legacy RAIDs via Thunderbolt. If the new OS or the new hardware won't allow me to connect to those RAIDs, I'll have to have two MacBook Pros at some point. I'll keep this one and I'll have a new one, the M3. The M3 MacBook Pro, that'll be exciting for me because that'll be my next very likely purchase. I like the Mac Mini, I like the Mac Studio, I like both of those, but I need to be portable for NAB. And if we have the Future Media Concepts conferences does the Final Cut Pro Creative Summit in November this year, which I'm thinking that they might, back in Cupertino, we might get a chance to finally get to the Spaceship Campus. We've been promised that for the last couple of in-person creative summits, and we never made it. It was canceled last time, 2 weeks before the summit. No, we know who canceled it. We know who canceled it. Tim Cook did. Apple did. Future Media Concepts was planning on going, but something happened and they canceled it in 2019. So when I get done here, I'm going down to Main Street, Sykesville, where I live in Carroll County, and they have an art and wine festival. And I'll do a little live streaming from there. Oh, by the way, let me just pull this up. Let me pull this up too. Let me see what's going on here. M3 iMac Pro, gimme, absolutely. People have been saying there's going to be no iMac Pro. I think there's going to be a 27-inch or larger iMac Pro. Absolutely. They're not going to stay at the 24-inch forever. They've had time to develop it now. So that would be a phenomenal machine. Now, that would be tempting. That would be tempting because I have this MacBook Pro I'm going to keep. This could be my portable machine when I go to NAB or travel. And an iMac Pro, that would be an interesting machine to have, wouldn't it? Yes, it would. But I definitely think they're going to have a larger version of the iMac coming forward. Let me pull this up. Let me see right here. I'm going to go to preview mode and go to videos. Oh, here we go. Yeah. Let me just pull this up. Darn it. That should be.
graphic, you'll see the same graphic if it does rotate around the top. So yeah, this was made in PipKit. All these
so this is
picture-in-picture effects.
our friend from Australia, Ian Anderson. He has a brand new plugin out, which I love. I use this all the time. Let me see if I have it. Here we go. Cam link. So it's called PIP Kit. It's on for sale at FX Factory. It's on sale right now. If you want to get it, it's on sale. So it's a very easy way to do picture-in-picture. You can add borders to them. You can add shadows to them. He has all kind of shapes in here. You can have it zoom in, coming in, zoom out, coming in. You have one with like a what do they call that a Kodak? What do they call the old pictures that came out instantly? Whatever they are, like a frame like that with a title on it. You can have that. It's really, really cool. Let's just watch a little bit of this.
Clips, which I just put on the timeline. That's a screenshot straight out of Final Cut, including the background being really blurry. That is from the titles that come with PipKit. So
wait a minute. That's something else I'm not using. Okay.
Well,
I keep learning stuff.
Why don't I give you a live stuff PipKit? So circle, rectangles, and then we've got other things. We've got arrows. There's a combo effect, which is a circle and a square. There's a freeform four corner, freeform smooth, instant picture, which is really kind of fun. Polygons, scribble, and a lot of these have other options in there as well. So we've got different kinds of speech bubbles. There's lots.
Oh, sorry. Thank you for telling me my audio was turned off. Sorry. So what I was saying was go over there to FX Factory. I mute myself and then I forget to turn it back on. Thanks for telling me. So go over there to FX Factory and do a trial of picture-in-picture version of Ian's new plugin. I think it's just for, you can try it out. It's also on sale. But what happened was I went over there. I went to NAB, which I really enjoyed. I really enjoyed it. I'm already looking forward to NAB 2024. But I'll get there a day early next time. Instead of Sunday morning, I'll get there Saturday afternoon. But anyway, a lot of times when I film at NAB, I film with two cameras on the iPhone. The iPhone is capable of the iPhone is capable of filming with two cameras. So we had a comment here, getting good at reading lips. Thank you. That's very funny. Just shout at me like you did, Tim, when I forget to unmute. That's fine. Has there been any kind of hint for anything new in Final Cut Pro? Well, there's going to be text-based editing. I guarantee you that. Of course, they're going to be text-based editing. They're going to be following DaVinci Resolve and Premiere at this point, but I don't care about that. Some innovation along with text-based editing. Of course, they're going to have text-based editing. Text-based editing is the present and the future, both. It's a current way to edit, and it's also the future. So that's what we like. That's what we like. And what else do we have going on? So anyway, Looking forward to WWDC in a month. That's the next big event. Then Final Cut Pro's birthday is June 21st. It'll be his 12th birthday, if I'm not mistaken, 12th birthday. June 21st, 2023 is 12. We'll see. They've never released a version of Final Cut on its birthday, which is kind of odd. You would think they'd celebrate that birthday with the new version of Final Cut. They've never done that, so. But anyway, I had a real good time over there at NAB. I met a lot of interesting people, some Final Cut Pro friends. I met some new people, and I enjoyed it. I'm looking forward to doing it again next year. I had great sponsors. A lot of you went to buymeacoffee.com and paid for my hamburgers. I went over to In-N-Out Burger a couple of times. I like that because that's where I stay in that neighborhood. Worked out really, really well. So, what do you think? WWDC? New version of Final Cut? A preview of Final Cut? Of a new version? I think that's more likely than just a new version being released. But, Apple can do what they want, obviously, and they can surprise us. But that's not what WWDC is about. It's not about Final Cut Pro. NAB was a place to do a new version. Not ready yet. Either they're doing something or they're all asleep. They've all been put under a spell because we've gotten 2 features in 16 months, 18 months. Where is the work? Where we aren't going to see the evidence of the work. I don't pay attention to people talking. This doesn't interest me at all. There's enough people that just do this all the time. I'm interested in walking, actions. I'm interested in actions, not talk. That's what I'm interested in. All right, what else do we have? We showed, let's go over here real quick and see what's going on over here. Any activity in the cat room? I don't think so. I don't think there's any activity. I don't think there's even any cats in there. That's outside the green area. That's the road out front. I don't see anything. Well, listen, I'm not, I'm sticking with Final Cut, but that doesn't mean I can't use Resolve. Resolve Beta 18.5 is very cool. Now, I have the studio version. If you only have the free version, you don't get the text-based editing. It's not in the free version. At least not at this point. Right now it's in the beta, but you have to have the studio. You have to download the studio beta, and you got to give them your license number in order to download that. Spot says you sound a bit excited. Thanks. Well, I'm excited for a couple different things. The only thing that's exciting me right now, to be honest with you, is Resolve Beta 18.5. That's exciting. With LumaFusion as well, because LumaFusion has the multicam app now. But as far as desktop NLE editors, LumaFusion is very, very cool for the iPad. But Blackmagic 18.5 is exciting, the studio version with text-based editing. I use that all the time. Even if I have to, open caption something in Final Cut, I just export the video out of Final Cut, bring it into DaVinci Resolve Studio Beta, and click on the project, go to Timeline, and it does captions. You can select all of them and adjust all of them. You can adjust position. You can adjust whether it has a background. You can obviously edit the text. You can edit the timing on everything. And then I spit that version out with open captions if I need it. It works great. It works fantastic, especially for a beta. I hope the lemon in text-based editing with Apple is not going to be Siri-related. God help us. Yes, I don't want Siri's. I don't use Siri. It's just very, it's very limited. Let's say. Spot Lewis says I as well, which is I think he meant about using Resolve 18.5 beta. So once again, that's exciting me right now. Final Cut is not exciting. Final Cut is we haven't had anything exciting in Final Cuts for over a year. We had two features in March, April of last year, right before NAB. Nothing since then. Just bug fix, bug fix, bug fix. It's not exciting. Now, I'd like to be excited again for Final Cut. I want all of us to be able to say, look what they've done. Look what they've done. Final Cut Pro 11 or whatever they're going to come out with. A couple years ago, year and a half ago, I was talking to Michael Cioni, and he said, what if they changed the name and stopped calling it Final Cut? Get rid of that legacy launch problem that they had. Could they do that? Of course they could. Of course they could. Instead of Final Cut 11 or Final Cut 10.7 or whatever, they could say, here's a new app, we're calling it whatever, but you will be able to open up your old Final Cut Pro 10 projects in it. That's something they didn't do when they went from 7 to Final Cut Pro 10. You could not open your Final Cut Pro 7 projects in Final Cut Pro 10. That was a big mistake. That never should have, they should have figured out something to be able to at least get 95%, maybe not 100%, but 95%. But they didn't. So anyway, we're going to talk the next couple of weeks. We'll still be talking about Final Cut Pro at WWDC, the possibility of release. Now, they could release it, of course, at any time. That's not even a question, is it? They could release it anytime they want, but it makes sense if they're going to have something big coming out. Yeah, wait till WWDC. Wait till Final Cut Pro's birthday. Whatever you want to do, that's fine. Whatever they want to do, I should say. Final Cut Pro team, we love you. We want you to get some features out. You have to. How big is the team? 20 people, 30 people, 40 people, 100 people? What have they been doing for the last 16 months? We see no evidence of any activity over there. We, the public, Final Cut Pro editors, see no evidence of any activity from the Final Cut Pro team. We want to see evidence that you guys are alive. We also don't have spatial audio or Atmos in Final Cut Pro as yet. That's interesting. Huh. I mean, you would think they would have it. Now, the other thing is what's going on with Logic. Logic, this is an unusual length of time for Logic not to be updated as well. So let's see what happens. Let's see what happens. I'm always waiting for the next thing. It's like Charlie Brown with the football. Keep waiting. But once again, I don't pay attention to this. Apple penned that letter, the response to the letter. They haven't, first off, it was very vague. It was very vague. They did the one thing they're doing something with the Hollywood editors. We know that firsthand from Michael Yanovich, who's there. He said he can say for a fact that those meetings are taking place. He can't say what's been shown or talked about in the meetings, but they have been taking place. But that's all they've done. They have the training at Future Media Concepts too, but that's not really Apple now, is it? I mean, I guess they're cooperating somehow. But the other things, they're not really letting us know, and there's no reason not to. They've shown 2 betas to us. Final Cut Pro last year, they allowed the beta version of 10.6.2 to be shown on YouTube in March. Didn't come out until April, right before NAB. That was one time the Final Cut Pro team / Apple allowed us to see a beta version of Final Cut Pro. The other time was Final Cut Pro 10.4.4 came out. We had a preview at the Final Cut Pro Creative Summit in Cupertino. That was 2018. The preview, the beta, was allowed to be talked about, photographed, posted on social media, but it didn't come out until December. So it was 6 weeks in advance. We were allowed to talk about it. They gave us demonstrations on it. So that's twice that they have shown us a beta version of Final Cut Pro with their approval. Twice. They don't do that often, but they do it. So if they showed us a beta version at WWDC, it wouldn't be out of order. It wouldn't be out of line, because they've already shown us multiple times that they can do that. but they've never released a feature update to Final Cut Pro at WWDC. They've never done that. So release, pleasantly surprised if they did a release, but I don't think so. A preview, yes, they've shown us previews. They've absolutely shown us previews at WWDC that come out later in the year. If the Mac Pro is released at WWDC, the Apple Silicon Mac Pro, I'm very confident there's going to be, my confidence is up, that there's going to be a new version of Final Cut Pro shown on that new Mac Pro. What it is and the features it has, I'm not that confident we'll see at WWDC. But if the Mac Pro comes out, I'm confident we will see a new version of Final Cut, at least demonstrated. This is a pre-release, demonstrated. This version will come out later in the year, right around the Creative Summit 2024. That's my prediction. If there's still a Final Cut team, I have a lot of hope. Well, I haven't heard that there's not a Final Cut Pro team. Have you heard something that I haven't heard? No, I'm sure there's still a Final Cut Pro team. That's not the issue. But got to give kudos once again to Resolve. Blackmagic Resolve 18.5 beta is a killer update, especially with text-based editing. I'm confident, very confident the Final Cut Pro will have that, whatever form it's going to take. Will it improve the current versions? I hope so. I'd like to see the improvement so that text-based editing goes both ways. You can select the text and it selects the video, and you can select the video and it'll select the text backwards from the timeline back to the browser. I like to see both of those. Right now it's one direction. Select the text, it selects the section of video. In Resolve, you can make a subclip. In Final Cut, it would be a favorite. You can make a favorite if you select the text and then make a favorite. That would be very cool. What do you think about WWDC and Final Cut Pro? And what do you think about Final Cut Pro on the iPad? What do you think about both of those? Possibility exists for both. Not discounting either one. I think Final Cut Pro on the iPad is more unlikely to happen this year. If it happens next year, that's fine. I really don't have a strong opinion one way or the other about it. It will not affect the way I edit. I'm going to continue editing on my MacBook Pro as I've been doing for years. And I have my monitors, I have my RAIDs. So it won't affect me. But if you want it, I hope it comes out for you. As far as a new version of Final Cut, they're way overdue for a good feature update for us. Whatever the heck they're working on, it's time. WWDC. Don't let us go through the entire summer with no new Final Cut Pro update. That's torture. You are torturing your Final Cut Pro faithful out here, if that's what you're planning on doing. I don't think so. I think we'll see something around WWDC. Something. Preview, beta version. Now, if they don't do the Mac Pro, the odds of seeing something Final Cut Pro related are a little bit lower. If they show the Mac Pro, the odds of seeing a new version of Final Cut Pro, I have much more confidence that happens. A lot of talk on the web, but I come to your site for the accurate information. Well, thank you. I mean, everybody speculates. I have some things that I know and some things that I speculate on. I have a combination of both. But like I said, expectations are down here. I want them raised up. Raise them up here. My Blackmagic Resolve expectations are here because for the last 3 or 4 years, they've been phenomenal with features and performance and everything else. Blackmagic's up here. Final Cut, at this point, these are my expectations, are down here. I would certainly like Final Cut Pro team to push this up, get it up with a nice new update. We've been waiting for a while, so that would be fantastic. I think LumaFusion has iPad editing licked, and iMovie can better on the iPad anyway. That's what Apple will push. I agree with you. It's going to be hard to beat LumaFusion. LumaFusion's been doing it for years on the iPad. For years on the iPad. Apple has promoted them over and over at different Apple presentations. So LumaFusion is very sophisticated. It's very, very cool. It's a great team, very responsive team of developers. And if you have an Apple version of Apple Silicon version of your Mac, you can use LumaFusion on the Mac. You can download that version. It's not the same as the iPad version, the touch version, but it's getting there. It's getting there. Now, if they ever release an official Mac version of LumaFusion, that would be very exciting for me. I really like LumaFusion. I really like the team. Chris and Terry are fantastic. Interviewed them at NAB. Well, I don't know, the 6th or 7th interview I've done. So LumaFusion is great. I really like Blackmagic right now. Those are the two that are exciting me. Apple is not exciting me at this point. It's the excitement's not there. But it can be if they release a new version. I'm going to get out of here, and I got another live stream to do. If something happens with Final Cut during the week, I'll be back on here live. Make sure you subscribe over there at Richard Taylor TV. Don't forget, like and subscribe over there. Don't forget, Richard Taylor TV. I appreciate it. And until the next episode of Final Cut Pro, of Final Cut TV Live, I'll be back next Saturday. I'm planning on it at 11 o'clock. I might not make 52 weeks of the year, but we'll see if we can get up something close to 52. I might take a week or a week off or so in the summer. We'll see. But, of course, anything Final Cut Pro happens, we'll be back live within a couple hours. The main thing is I let you talk. I let all your comments come through. We post them on here. I don't want these live streams with 50 people on screen. Everybody's all over the place. Everybody's chatting and talking over each other, and they can't control things. 50 people, I don't want to see 50 people on screen. A couple of people is fine, 2 or 3. We have more guests coming on, for sure. We had Ian Anderson on that last week, Friday, and we will have more. Go see Ian's plugin over there at FX Factory. Download it and try it out. I love it. I really like it a lot. Anyway, I'm going to get out of here. Thanks to each and every one of you for tuning in. Thanks to the Final Cut Pro team. I'm sure you're working hard, but you haven't shown us signs of life for quite a while. We'd like to see signs of life over there. Something at WWDC, something before then is fine. A new version of Final Cut with features, please. Thank you, everybody. I'll talk to you later.